This is the big story here in Israel right now. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has formally asked the President of Israel for a pardon. This is a big deal. Will he get the pardon? Does he deserve the pardon? Should he get it? These are the questions that every Israeli is asking. Hi, this is Joel Rosenberg in Jerusalem with a YouTube exclusive for the Rosenberg Report. Now, this is a big deal because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, widely known here as Bibi, the security services, the police investigative services started investigating him about 10 years ago, right? So he's been under investigation for a decade. The trial has been the last 4 or 5 years, during COVID and now during this war. And Netanyahu says he's completely innocent. These are trumped up charges. This is sort of a political witch hunt. It's all designed to drive him out of office, right? And he's saying you don't have the goods, you don't have the proof. But the trial is going slowly. Part of that, obviously, is because he's the sitting prime minister, and you can't just make him sit in the court every single day, day after day. He's got other things to do, including over the last 2 years, run a war and win a war on 7 different fronts. So this thing is taking a long time, and obviously, it's having a huge. It's got to be having a huge emotional pressure on the prime minister and his family and his team, but it's also draining a lot of resources. He's got to pay these legal bills at some point, and he doesn't make that much money as the prime minister. That's his case, right? Then those who think he's guilty are saying, what are you talking about? Okay, so he can't be treated differently. He has to be treated the same as anybody else. These are serious charges: bribery, corruption. There's a number of serious indictments. There's like 336 witnesses that the prosecution plans to keep working their way through. And he's getting his day in court, and let's run the process out until there's a conclusion, until there's a verdict. But what happened a few weeks ago, right, when U.S. President Donald Trump came to Israel as his plan to release all the hostages out of Gaza was successful, and the hostages were coming out that day. Of course, Trump gave that big and very well received speech at the Knesset, huge, multiple dozens of standing ovations. And then he shocked everyone by saying to all the Israeli leadership, all the members of the Knesset, and to the president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, hey, this guy, Bibi Netanyahu, is a great war leader. He's winning, and he shouldn't be under trial. Give him a pardon. And of course, the government ministers and everybody that's part of the coalition government cheered and wildly. They were shocked, but they were very excited that Trump would say it. Obviously, the opposition was not excited about that. And President Herzog, to his credit, was sort of caught off guard by this request by an American president for the pardon of an Israeli prime minister who's still on trial. There is no verdict yet, and the trial still. If it continues, it's going to be several years before we get a verdict. Okay, so that's the challenge, right? Now, so President Trump said that. Then, a few weeks after that, President Trump sent a formal letter to President Herzog because that's the official protocol. A letter has to be received. You can't just say something in the media or even in the Knesset. So the president's office received that letter. Then, just a couple days ago, Prime Minister Netanyahu sent his own 11-page letter making the case that enough is enough. This trial's going on. It's sucking time away from the public. The sitting prime minister has to be able to govern without all these distractions. And I'm innocent anyway, he said. So he's asking for a full and unconditional pardon. Prophecy is unfolding right before our eyes. Israel's been prophetically reborn, Jews are returning to Israel, but Israel has also been attacked from all sides. Now we pray that calm and quiet will continue and expand in the weeks and months ahead, but we can all see the birth pangs that Jesus described shaking Israel and her neighbors like never before. And that's exactly why the Joshua Fund works so hard in the heart of the epicenter to invest in and strengthen the local church. church to help our Jewish and Arab brothers and sisters in Christ, in the Messiah, to preach the word, make disciples, care for widows and orphans, and show people the love and hope and healing that we only have in Jesus. Now is not the time to sit on the sidelines. Now is the time to stand up, pray ceaselessly for the peace of Jerusalem, and give generously to advance the kingdom of Christ in the very land where he was born, died, and where he was raised again, and where he's coming again, I hope soon. Your monthly support makes it possible for the Joshua Fund to be the hands and feet of Jesus to families who are suffering and to respond quickly when a new crisis hits. Will you join us? Now is the time that we need you most. Go to joshuafund.com/TBN today and become a monthly partner in this prophetic mission. Together, let's make an eternal impact by blessing Israel and her neighbors in the name of Jesus. The way the legal system should work in any democracy is that you're innocent until proven guilty, right? And that's the way I approach Prime Minister Netanyahu. I do not have any idea whether he's guilty of these things, but operationally, I've just decided that I should go with the principle he's innocent until the state proves him guilty. And if he does, then he'll have to pay the consequences and or cut a deal, right? A plea bargain is possible. But until then, he's the Prime Minister. We should support him. We don't have to agree with him on everything. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, this is sort of a nuisance, but it's also part of democracy. If the state accuses you of doing something wrong, you got to stand trial, and they have to prove that you are guilty. You obviously defend yourself, but you don't have to prove your innocence. The state, has to prove your guilt. Okay, that's just the way the system works. But it is taking forever. And this has been a decade-long investigation and, 4 or 5 years, like I said, of this trial. And it does seem to be going on. And that's why Trump is saying enough is enough. That's why Bibi himself and his lawyers are saying enough is enough. But this puts President Herzog in a real bind, in a conundrum, right? Because he has what options does he have? An Israeli president has basically the same options as an American president has, which is you have the freedom to pardon anybody. And you do not have to give a reason. But this is a highly charged political environment, right? Where even people, not just on the left who hate Bibi, and not just people on the center who are disappointed in Bibi or angry at Bibi, but even people on the center right who have been disappointed, discouraged, frustrated with Bibi, aren't sure if he's actually guilty of these things, right? The country is divided on this topic. And, in an ideal world, the trial would come to a close, both sides would give their closing arguments, and, there would be a verdict. And then if he's guilty, then, you deal with those consequences. If he's declared not guilty, then he's free and life moves on. So what does President Herzog do? He has the freedom, I'm told by legal experts, to make this decision. But he's basically making a political decision in many ways. Right? So this sort of cuts both ways. We say everybody should be treated the same. The Prime Minister should be treated like every other person. Okay, well, every other person has the right to petition the President of the country and say, I ask for a pardon. Usually, in almost every case where someone asks the President for a pardon, they've already been convicted as guilty. Okay? Now, maybe they still proclaim their innocence, or maybe they've admitted, okay, I did those things. Maybe I didn't do all the things you said, but I did some of them, and I am guilty. But I asked for lenience. I asked for a pardon. I've been in prison for this number of years, and I think I've served my time, or I'm ill, or I'm close to death, or it's a hardship on my family. And the president has the right to weigh any, all, or no factors whatsoever. He can make that decision. He has the full right to do it. The challenge is when you're asking the president of the country for a pardon for someone who the trial isn't over yet, and the Prime Minister isn't saying, okay, I'm guilty of some of it, and I'm sorry, but in the grand scheme, it wasn't such a big deal, and I'm asking for a pardon so I can just continue leading the country, and then the people will decide in an election whether I should stay or not. But that's not the decision for the courts, it's the decision of the people. And there is merit to that argument, right? But now there's a whole nother wrinkle that's entering into this thing. So there are news reports in the Hebrew media, and I can't verify that it's true, but I can just tell you, yes, these are things that have been being discussed in the Hebrew media, that President Herzog's office, people close to Herzog, are saying that the president is considering sort of a conditional pardon. If, Mr. Prime Minister, if you admit some level of guilt and some level of contrition, then I'll consider pardoning you. And or if you say, okay, I am guilty on some of these things and I am sorry and I'm leaving government and I never intend to come back, and then maybe that would be a way to end the sort of national nightmare of political wrangling over this and let him finish out his term, and then we go to elections and Bibi doesn't run and, the country moves on. Now, as soon as those news reports were out there, Herzog's office immediately said, no, that's not true. That's not what the president is considering. So there's a lot of dust in the air, let's say, right now, and I think it's not clear. What is clear is it's going to take weeks or maybe months for the president's office for the president to make a decision, right? Because the process is that Herzog sends this letter, this formal request from Netanyahu, and Trump's letter too, sends it through a whole process of the attorney general, the lawyers, everybody that would be involved in reviewing this and see, are there merits for a pardon in these unique set of circumstances. And then the president will get all those recommendations, and in the meantime he'll have a time to weigh it. Then he can process the legal pros and cons and the public's sentiment and make a decision. Now, there are voices really on both sides of this. Enough already. Bibi's been under a witch hunt for 10 years. Enough, stop. Like, we've got to have any prime minister be able to do his job. And there's others saying that, if you're guilty, you're at least indicted. You've got to finish out the process of the trial. You don't just get to have the president give you a get out of jail free card, as it were. I say that euphemistically, I think. So this is a challenge, and there's one point that I want to draw your attention to. Look, most evangelical Christians and people who love Israel all around the world aren't watching this trial closely. We're not covering this trial closely. Why? Because there's so much else to cover. It's not that it's not important. I really believe in that Israel's system has its own challenges, our legal system. But I think it's interesting that Israel's president a number of years ago was actually convicted on sexual assault against young women in his office, and he went to prison. A former prime minister that I've interviewed on this program, Ehud Olmert, he was convicted on some things, not that he did as prime minister, but some corruption issues that were related to what he did when he was the mayor of Jerusalem. But he got convicted, he went on a trial, and he got convicted while he was the sitting prime minister, and he had to leave. And he's still upset about that to this day, and still refutes a lot of that. But nobody gave him a pardon. Nobody gave either of these guys a pardon. So there's a challenge. Like, should Netanyahu get a pardon? Why is this night different from all other nights? But here's the thing. So I honestly don't know yet for myself whether I think this is a good idea. I still maintain that he's innocent and the state has to prove that he's guilty. I would kind of like to know, we have gotten through this war and he was able to win the war while still being on trial. So I know it's a huge financial burden on him. So I'm conflicted on whether the trial should just run to its end. That's my instinct, but I'm going to be listening and reading and processing this during this next few weeks while everybody's talking about it. But here's the one piece that I want to draw your attention to, and that is this. This idea, if it's true, and I don't know that it is, but if it's true that the president of Israel is considering a conditional pardon, I'll pardon you if you leave office and never come back. I think I have a problem with that, because that feels like you're not being treated like a normal person. You're being treated like, I will remove this legal burden from you, but I'm isolating you from never being in politics again. Now, maybe Netanyahu's going to run and he's not going to win. Not going to be able to build a coalition again. Maybe Naftali Bennett's going to win, or somebody else, right? So I don't know. And I don't take a position on that. But I have this initial anxiety that a president, whoever the president, I like Isaac Herzog very much. I've gotten to know him. I really appreciate his honesty, his integrity. So I'm going to be praying for him to have wisdom, the wisdom of Solomon, to know what to do. But here's the thing. I don't think any president of the country here in Israel should say, I'll give you a pardon if you leave office and promise never to return, and we make it legally binding so you cannot return. That feels like an effort at pushing someone out of the political system, when I think everyone has the right. If you're not indicted of what in the U.S. we'd call a felony that comes with something called moral turpitude here, meaning it's a really serious crime. If you're convicted like that, you cannot, under the Israeli law, you cannot serve in the Knesset or as a minister, or at least as a minister, and you can't serve as prime minister. So, but we're not to the point of even a conviction yet. So maybe this is all a premature discussion, but this is the discussion right now. This has become a huge topic of discussion, and I want you to be aware of it. I want you to be praying about it, because we need to pray for our prime minister, whoever it is, that he has the time and the energy to do a good job for the protection of the people. And there's a lot of complexity here. So that's a quick update on Bibi's request for a pardon. Will he get it? I don't know. Should he get it? Why don't we be praying about that? This is Joel Rosenberg in Jerusalem with a YouTube exclusive for the Rosenberg Report.